All right. So the recording of this webinar will be available on YouTube eventually. If you need to leave or anything early, that's totally fine. You can rewatch it at any point. I'll be sending out a link with the recording to attendees via email, as well as a survey for this presentation with Elizabeth Heiser. Okay, so welcome everyone to Chagrin River Watershed Partners Speaker Series presentation with Elizabeth Heiser, a stream restoration ecologist with the Cleveland Metroparks. Elizabeth has over 20 years of experience as a watershed and stormwater professional, leading a wide range of interesting projects along the way. She earned her Bachelor's of Science in Water Resources with a concentration in geology from Heidelberg College. Elizabeth will be presenting Green Infrastructure 101. Thank you for attending. My name is Maggie. I'm an AmeriCorps member serving with Chagrin River Watershed Partners. Excuse me. And before the formal presentation with Elizabeth, here's some quick background on the speaker series, CRWP, and the Chagrin River Watershed. I'm going to share this presentation now. It'll just be a couple slides. All right. So CRWP hosts these webinars each winter by partnering with environmental professionals to engage and educate other interested professionals and members of the community about environmental protection and other various parts of conservation. CRWP partners with Cleveland Metroparks for many things, and we are super fortunate and thankful to have them and Elizabeth Heiser specifically for all the work they do. So, some quick background. The Chagrin River Watershed is a high-quality watershed just east of the Cleveland metropolitan area, neighboring the Cuyahoga River watershed, which a bunch of you said. This high-quality title comes from the Chagrin River having over 71 miles that are designated as scenic, as well as having cold water streams and supporting a population of Ohio brook trout. However, it is still impacted by development activities which increase flooding, erosion, and water quality problems. So over 20 years ago, in 1996, 16 communities came together to form the Chagrin River Watershed Partners to pool knowledge and resources and cost-effectively keep the watershed healthy as communities grow. Today, the partners' 35 members represent over 91% of the watershed in Cuyahoga, Geauga, Lake, and Portage counties. Here you can see a list of CRWP's current member communities. Chagrin River Watershed Partners is supported by member dues, grants, and donations. We provide technical assistance on land use planning to minimize flooding, erosion, and water quality issues, and focus on cost-effective solutions to communities and landowners. We also co-lead the Central Lake Erie Basin Collaborative, a regional partnership for healthy watersheds. That link I sent, if you saw that in the chat, that took you to the map of the Northeast Ohio watersheds, is a link to the CLEB website. Through this network, we provide technical assistance and support for watersheds organizations all across Northeast Ohio. All right, final slide for me. Here's a summary of CRWP's wide variety of work. Our watershed scale work benefits all of our members and includes watershed planning, research, plus developing and updating model watershed protection codes. In addition to watershed scale work, CRWP collaborates with members on grant writing, helps communities adopt and implement codes, provides recommendations for development plans, supports compliance with stormwater requirements, and educates and empowers people to steward watersheds and tackle erosion and stormwater challenges. Most of our work with our members is supported through grants and service agreements secured by CRWP or members with CRWP's assistance or contracts with members. We're super thankful to those that support our work and ability to protect Northeast Ohio's waterways. Today, you are here for Green Infrastructure 101, where Elizabeth Heiser will discuss design and maintenance basics of green infrastructure and bioretention, lessons learned from maintaining bioretention throughout the Cleveland Metroparks, and encourage you to be a stormwater and watershed steward. If you have questions, please feel free to type any as we go into the chat. We'll cover them towards the end with a little Q&A session. And with that, thank you so very much for bearing with me. Thank you, Elizabeth, for this presentation, and thank you to all of you interested in the topic. Take it away, Elizabeth.
Great. Can you see the screen good on your
Yes, that
screen?
looks great.
Okay, perfect. I'm just making sure that I've got my notes up and then we'll get going. Great. So good to see so many friendly faces. And if you've seen this presentation before, don't worry, I've got some new stuff for you. So stay tuned, but feel free to tune out to the parts you've heard before. I'm Elizabeth Heiser, stream restoration ecologist for Cleveland Metroparks. I've been with the park since early 2022. Prior to that, I was with Cuyahoga Soil and Water Conservation District, where before being the Euclid Creek Watershed Program Manager, I inspected stormwater control measures throughout Cuyahoga County. I'm certified stormwater control maintenance inspection and maintenance from Ohio and North Carolina. So I know a little bit about green infrastructure, and I get to dabble in it in my day-to-day job at Cleveland Metroparks by managing some green infrastructure staff who help our park maintenance staff to maintain our various stormwater control measures throughout the park. Before we dive into some of the more nitty-gritty details, I do just want to give a little bit of general stormwater background and why green infrastructure is important. Then we'll talk about bioretention basics, what they are, how they're designed, how they're maintained, common maintenance issues, and then how Cleveland Metroparks has been working to maintain our bioretention, and then how you can get involved, and time for some questions. I do want to recognize that in all of my previous roles, I've pulled together some of that content to make this presentation. So a lot of this stems from a municipal separate storm sewer system presentation series that we did way back when I was at Soil and Water for various municipal employees as they were starting to maintain these different practices. Also from my time with Master Rain Gardener and just general presentations from the parks. So various partners have contributed to these. So if you're not aware of what stormwater is not just the rain or snow that's falling down on the landscape. It's what it's picking up on its way to our storm drains, to our streams, to our rivers and lakes. So it's that water that hits the hard surface and everything that it comes in contact with on the way to our local watersheds. And I like to read this statement because it really shows the impact of all these little things happening that add up to big things. So it's estimated that every year 193 million gallons of oil is washed, spilled, or dumped into United States waterways. This is roughly the equivalent of 17 Exxon Valdez oil spills. So it's just us forgetting to maintain our vehicles, and all of that throughout all of our landscape adds up to this big impact. That's not great for our environment. So it's not just water, it's trash, it's debris, it's salt. We've got Winter Salt Awareness Week coming up next week. It's oil from your cars if you're not maintaining them. It's the soap that you use to wash your car if you're doing that at home and not at a car wash. It's the sediment that comes off of construction site and extra glass clippings. All of those things adding up to get into our waterways. Just from the nature of being run off the land. So stormwater pollution at the watershed level is really the leading threat to water quality in our United States surface waters. In addition to water quality impacts, stormwater runoff also contributes to higher flows in streams, increased erosion and flooding, damage to habitat, property, and infrastructure. Stormwater runoff's really exacerbated as we continue to develop and create more and more hard surfaces and impervious surfaces like roofs and pavement, parking lots, driveways, roads. And I think this urban sprawl demographic kind of shows that footprint has been growing. So even though our population hasn't really changed that much in Cuyahoga County, it's been spreading out from Cleveland. So some watershed studies have shown that as you get more and more of those hard surfaces, impervious cover, what happened there?
Excuse me, so sorry.
Yep. No, that's okay. I lost my notes there for a second.
I'm so sorry.
Nope, you're good. So impervious cover impacts, as we increase them, watershed studies have shown that,
Sorry, would you mind resharing your
oh,
screen? I was
no,
making it so no one else could reshare theirs. We had a little
a
technical
little
issue.
snafu. No worries. I will find that Zoom thing. Technology. Let's see.
That was my bad for not making the proper
That's okay.
settings. Thank you. Thank you
Yep.
everyone for bearing with us.
Can everyone see that now?
Yep, looks
All
great.
right, perfect.
Thank you.
Yep. So back to impervious cover impacts. So watershed studies have shown that once you get to about 10 to 18% impervious surface cover in a watershed, your streams are going to start to erode and aquatic diversity is going to start to decline. So what does that mean for our local watersheds? Cleveland Metroparks, these are our main watersheds that we're working in. Recent land cover data shows that Euclid Creek is well above that 18%. Cuyahoga River, it gets some benefits from upstream where there's not as much impervious surface, same with Chagrin and Rocky River. But we're still in that zone where stream erosion is starting to occur and aquatic diversity impacts are happening. And we've done primary headwater studies throughout all of our parks that really back up this this statement that impervious cover is affecting aquatic diversity. I wanted a little bit better map, but basically you can see these dark green sections are watersheds where our primary headwater data, the biology data we collected combined with land use shows that those are our most impacted watersheds, those in that really dense impervious cover area closer to Cleveland. So the data backs up and is saying, stormwater is an issue, impervious surfaces are increasing problems in our watersheds. So they cause negative impacts to streams and stream habitat. They're sending pollution more rapidly to the environment. Often we're overwhelming storm sewers, flooding, basement backups. So what did we do about that? So when we first started dealing with these, we created ways to get that water off our properties, away from us as soon as possible, move that issue downstream. And that creates its own issues. So we were using culverts, drains, ditches, pipes, etc. The new way is trying to look at our natural landscapes and trying to make those areas where we have development act more like nature. So slow that water down, filter out the pollutants, improve water quality, and provides additional benefits. So work with nature to reduce and treat our stormwater at the source rather than pushing it down to the next person. And how do we do that? We use different green infrastructure. So rain gardens, green roofs, rain barrels, downspout disconnection, pervious pavement, etc. So that's what you can do at home. You can build a rain garden. You can use a rain barrel. You can replace some of your impervious surfaces with pervious surfaces, plant more trees. Trees are great. And so we do that at Metroparks. We try to work with our upstream neighbors because we are in the valley. So we're getting all of that upstream water coming our way. So we want to work with our partners and our neighbors upstream to help do that at home. I work at the Watershed Stewardship Center, which is a regional demonstration site for stormwater management. We've got green roof, bioretention, permeable pavement, cistern, rain chains, every stormwater control measure you could possibly imagine. And we're trying to demonstrate how you can do that, not just at home, but also in more like municipal setting levels. So a demonstration site for how to use these and how to better treat our stormwater. We have, as of just recently, 111 stormwater control measures throughout Cleveland Metroparks and counting, more coming to Dunham Park soon. So we're really having to figure out how to maintain these and how to do best practices. So that's, high level, what is stormwater, what is green infrastructure, starting to get into why Metroparks is involved with it. And now we're going to talk in the weeds about bioretention, what it is, how it functions, how it's designed, and how you maintain it. So bioretention is basically engineered bowl for water to temporarily store water that's coming off the landscape. It can look many different ways, but the idea is water comes down from the sky, hits your pavement, runs off to this designated area where the water is going to be filtered by plants and different soils before it moves out into our drainage ways slowly and less polluted. So it can look all kinds of ways. You can have grass, you can have bump outs along the roads. But what's the purpose and how are they designed? So they're designed to control runoff and flooding. We want water quality improvements from these. These aren't just for storage. They're part of the landscape, so they should look good. Obviously a secondary value. And the key thing with these is they're designed by a licensed engineer for the special conditions for that site. So you need to know what size is your watershed, how much space do you have to put in your bioretention, what pollutants are you trying to address on the site, and what are the soil conditions that you're working with, because those will all affect your design. Thanks to Sewer District for this awesome graphic. Hopefully it will work. So it kind of shows our rain coming in to our basin, and then slowly infiltrating down through a layer of mulch, bioretention soil, filter layer, and some gravel bed, and hopefully getting into our groundwater and native soil. But for those that don't, it kind of starts to temporarily store, and then through perforated pipe and outlet will overflow to the local sewer or environment by design. And there's always an emergency exit for when we get those gully washers that overwhelm the system, because we don't want to flood the nearby infrastructure. So how do they work? They use soil media, mulch, and plants to reduce runoff and treat stormwater runoff. Basically, this happens from all those pollutants that are in that water coming into the basin. They settle at the top. Microbes help break down different pollutants. Plants are uptaking nutrients, phosphorus, and nitrogen. You're getting infiltration into the soil as well as temporary detention. So these really are addressing both flooding, water quantity, and quality. Key design features, what's coming at you? So what kind of hydrology do you have? Is it parking lot that you're treating? Are you treating road runoff? Size of your parking lot? How are you going to have water come in? What do your inlets look like and your outlets? What materials are you going to use? And what plants do you want? And we'll talk about how plants can really impact your maintenance. So inflow and transition areas, these are often high maintenance areas because it's where water's first hitting the practice. So different things you can use, curb cuts, so just a notch in the curb that lets water in. You can line that with riprap or rocks to help prevent erosion. You could have a pipe coming into your basin. You could have a gravel verge or grass filter strip just to help slow water as it comes into the practice. That's inlet. The basin or the depression or pit, this is where your water is going to hang out. And this is various layers. I like this picture because they're demonstrating all of them in there. So at the very bottom, you've got that 57 gravel. So those are like golf ball size aggregate clean. You're going to have a filter layer that prevents any sediment that does get through your top layers from clogging that gravel layer. So pea gravel and clean sand. And then above that, you're going to have a custom soil mix that's really designed for infiltration. So think more sandy, less clay, less silt. So we really want low levels of those fines that might stick together and clog, and more sand and a little bit of organic matter to support your plants. So this is what that looks like in a cross section. You've got those filter layers and washed rock. We've learned lessons since we started doing this at the beginning. We used to use filter fabric or that landscape fabric as a filter below that bioretention soil. And what we found was they became a clogging layer. So as those fines that come in from the landscape started making their way through your soil, they were settling right on that filter fabric. And then you have a pond instead of an infiltrating practice, which was not good. So these layers are designed to move water down and sideways through the under drains. The under drains are going to have a perforated pipe that lets some of that water out to an outlet if it doesn't infiltrate into the natural soil. They can be upturned, like the picture on the left. That's more for if you're trying to treat nitrogen, because it'll hold water for a little longer before it lets escape the practice. Ideally, your bioretention has under drain cleanouts because pipes get clogged, as we know. So ideally, you want that to be elevated, visible, and able to access it. For when something gets clogged, you want to be able to do something about it. You don't want it flush with the ground where you can't really open it. And then our outlet structure. So we want these to capture those events that are too large for the design of the practice. So most of these practices now are designed for around 0.9-inch rain events. So if we get a 2-inch rain event over the course of 24 hours, that's going to overwhelm your system. You need an exit strategy, just like your bathroom at home. If you got distracted while you were running the bath, that little device that prevents you from flooding your whole bathroom. Think of that for this. So it's really a place for that extra water to go. And then inside that outlet, there'll be that pipe that goes out to the system. These have to be elevated. So we want water to hang out in these practices. We want them to hang out there, slow down, infiltrate slowly. We don't want them to just bypass the whole practice and go straight down the outlet. So they really need to be at least 12 inches above that level of mulch. And that's a pretty common issue we see with installation. For some reason, installers, they just want to put these flat with the practice. Mulch, ideally you want double shredded hardwood mulch because it sticks together and it doesn't tend to float as much. You don't want pine. 3-inch layer is pretty good. It's going to help prevent weeds. It's going to add organic matter to the practice, help with their plants and your soil. It helps conserve moisture during dry weather for the plants, cool the soil. A lot of people just like the look of mulch, so it makes it look nice and tidy. I like the example here of Nestle, their bioretention. It looks very clean. And as mentioned, double shredded to prevent floating. You can have practices without mulch, but they got to be completely stabilized by plants. So basically a green mulch. And then your plants. Your plants are important. They're going to uptake your nutrients. They're going to soak up some of that water. They help stabilize the basin. And hopefully if you did it right, they look good. So these are not just everyday plants. You can't just put your favorite plant in bioretention. They really have to be plants that not only tolerate being inundated with water temporarily, but they also have to tolerate when it's not wet. So it's floodplain species tend to do good. Species that don't really care about anything tend to do good. So our generalists tend to do pretty well. So a lot of prairie species. Ideally, you want to use native species, just better for the local habitat. They do pretty well. If you're in a place where you need something to look really nice and tidy, maybe consider cultivars or nativars. You can use trees and shrubs. You just don't want ones that are too big that they'll fall over. These are pretty loose soils, so you need something that's sturdy. And from a maintenance perspective, it's best to really think about where you're going to plant and the patterns you're going to plant. Keep the same types of plant together, group them. It makes it easier to remember whether you actually planted that plant or whether it's a weed in the early spring when everything tends to look kind of weedy. So this is what it looks like when you're constructing a bioretention. I happened to catch this back when I was at Soil and Water. This was a redo, so they had done some things wrong and they had to redo it. So I was fortunate enough to come back out and catch them while they were doing it so you could see. So you got to dig your basin. You really want to chunk up the bottom of that, make sure it's not smeared shut, especially if you're in clayey soils. If you use a regular flat bucket and smear that shut, you're not going to get any infiltration. So then this turns into a pond. So really chunk up the bottom, add your washed gravel layer here. And then above that, you're going to got your filter layer. These guys were really happy that I made them redo this. It was about 90 degrees that day. They weren't thrilled with me, but do it right the first time, they say. So you got your filter layer, and then you've got your bioretention soil mix. So that's that nice sandy, little organic. And then on top of that, you're going to have your mulch. And notice that outlet with at least our 12 inches of elevation for making sure that the water hangs out here for a little while. So that's what they look like, how they're designed, how they should be constructed. Now we have to maintain them. These are not set it and forget it. A lot of people were sold that. They're like, there's native plants, they'll be fine. Turns out not so much. Everything needs maintenance. So why do we have to maintain them? Usually they're the only means of drainage in the landscape. If you're putting these in because you developed in a municipal separate storm sewer system or MS4, you're legally required to maintain them. So you have to treat your stormwater runoff now in urban landscapes. They're an investment. It's not cheap to put these in. Most landowners want their investments to have returns, so you want to take good care of them so you're not redoing them down the line. And they are part of the landscape. They should look good. And I'm a firm believer if your bioretention basin looks good, people are more inclined to care about them and respect them, and maybe implement them at home in their own landscape. So it's not the same as our typical landscape maintenance. Otherwise, I feel like we wouldn't have so many issues maintaining green infrastructure. Mobile and go, it doesn't really work for bioretention, especially if you've got if it's not just like a grass bioretention. Neither does spray and pray. We're really trying to make good water quality come out of these. So using chemicals on them is kind of antithetical to what the purpose is. You need to train your staff to recognize early signs of problems, get at things before they get out of control. So looking for erosion, looking at your outlets before or after rain events, looking for compaction issues, keeping out invasive plants, just good housekeeping, just preventing those big problems. You can do that by inspecting it routinely, ideally at least once a year. Twice a year is even better, spring, fall. Use a maintenance checklist so you don't forget anything, and really focus on preventative maintenance so that you can avoid costly repairs in the future. So at Cleveland Metroparks, what are our maintenance goals? We want these to function. We really are advocates for doing right to our watersheds. As mentioned, we're a very stream intensive Metroparks. We have over 1,000 miles of streams. We're in the valleys of everything from Rocky River on the west side all the way over to Chagrin River on the east side. And we really do get hammered by all these rain events. So we want to walk the walk as well. So we want these in our landscapes to function. We want them to look good. We want to inspire stewardship, and we want to inspire people to have these in their own landscape. We need to prevent invasive species, and we'd like to see co-benefits. You can get the stormwater management side of green infrastructure without the habitat, but we'd really like to see both. So what does maintenance look like? Mulching. It's a lot of gardening. So it's just gardening, gardening, gardening. So mulching when you want to have that neat, tidy look. Weeding. This is one that needs weeding. I promise it looks much better now. Managing invasives. So especially in those bioretention areas that maybe aren't front and center and are closer to our wild landscape, we got to make sure that we keep the invasive species from coming in. Replacing dead stuff. We've got some interesting issues with plants going on. This was at Wolf Picnic, our Huntington reservation. We've been having some, I don't know what it is, but I think it's like a fungi that's affecting our fragrant sumac. I'm thinking we're probably going to stop planting those, which is unfortunate because they're really nice, low-growing sumac, good shrub. The deer don't like them, but they were dying out, so we needed to replace them with something else. So making sure you keep your bioretention full. And then the edges. Edges are super important. So if you've got a grass filter strip, mow higher. Maintain that edge and border. I like the North Chagrin. Just look how much tidier it looks with a nice little edge. And then that helps with weed prevention. And then you do have to be mindful of when you're doing the edging and when you're blowing off your parking lots, where are you blowing those clippings, because you don't want to contribute to more weeds in your bioretention. So making sure you're not just spreading the weeds to where you're going to be doing your weeding project next month. Looking for our inlets and our outlets. So just keeping the spaces where water's coming in and out cut back so that you can get to them if there's maintenance issues. So at a minimum, an annual cutback around infrastructure. Sediment, these are where sediment's going to go in the landscape. They're also the enemy of your practice. The more sediment that's getting in your bioretention, the more likely it's going to get clogged and eventually fail. And not be as effective. So really getting at it before it gets into the practice. So this is a good example of sediment accumulation at the perimeter, scooping that out with a shovel, getting it out of there, disposing of it properly. Just regular street sweeping around it, leaf blowers, and having a location to get rid of it, not just putting it somewhere else where it's going to end up back in the bioretention. Slopes and stabilization and erosion are a big one. If you are trying to treat a lot of runoff in a big parking lot and you didn't have much space for your bioretention, so you have these really deep, steep bioretention, maybe consider rock instead of sod, and mulch for your stabilization. This was one of the ones we put in at Brookside, where we were experiencing that we had to come back in and put rock. The grass just wasn't cutting it. The slopes were too steep. Damage in infrastructure. So this is more non-routine, hopefully, but if you did have one of those bad outlet cleanouts put in and it's low to the ground and it got damaged by a mower, well, now you need to repair it because now you've just got an space for anything to get in and clog up your system. And then it's winter. I actually took this picture the other day. You never want to forget about winter with your bioretention and snow management. And the key is don't put your snow in your bioretention. So this is a good example at West Creek where they have designated pile areas for the snow alongside, but not in the bioretention. Pushing the snow into your bioretention would compact the practice. The salt that's coming along with that would end up in there. Most plants aren't really big salt lovers. And all that pollution that's on the snow would just like end up right in your basin. So have designated snow areas, not in your bioretention. All right, so that was nitty gritty. And now we'll talk a little bit more about how does this all get done? You know, I just told you we have 111 stormwater control measures. So how are we maintaining them throughout the parks? Seasonal staff. So the past 3 years now, we have had support from the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District to beta test the use of green infrastructure seasonal, so dedicated staff during the summer that have a little bit of interest in plants and horticulture to really help our park maintenance teams do this routine maintenance that has to occur. So this is just an example from the past 2 years where we had 2 seasonals and what that looked like. So around 1,200 to 13 hours of effort doing inspections and maintenance throughout the park. The year prior that we had 1 seasonal, but very short window, but he kind of helped us get the starting. We're coming out of COVID and things were looking a little rough. So we really were working on getting back to baseline the past couple of years. And I think last year we really started to figure that out. And going forward, we've recognized this need for dedicated staff. And thankfully, the sewer district, through our stormwater maintenance reimbursement fund, we are going to fund a part-time position to help with the administration end of it. And then they'll have that seasonal support as well. And I'll still manage that team to help our park maintenance. So they go out there. It's not just our staff. We also have volunteers who are helping. So our Watershed volunteer program, the past 2 years, we've done a Sunday series where they help at dedicated reservations. So you can just kind of see what this looks like. We also have volunteer services groups. So groups that say, we want to help out the Metroparks for a day. They come in and help us with some of this non-routine maintenance. West Creek Conservancy, our partners over there, we've helped out a little bit with their bioretention, and we've been the past 2 years had a really good relationship with Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District, where we try to do cross training with their staff because they're also maintaining a lot of these large bioretention. So Paul Kovacic, who I think was on the on today, he and my staff have kind of been swapping and doing some cross training. So just it's a village, I guess, is the point. It's not an easy job, and it requires attention. Some enhancements we've done to our program to help those staff when they're in the field and they have questions is having specific plant identification sheets for the plants that are in the practice that they're in. We've mapped all of our stormwater control measures, and we use a mobile application when they're in the field to track the time they've spent doing maintenance and what kind of maintenance they're doing. But then also that just helps them know where they're going and what practice they're looking at and the plans for that. And then some lessons that we've been building upon and trying. We've had some sites where we had great, wonderful, colorful, beautiful on planting day, but a little overwhelming later in the bioretention life. And so we have tried to narrow down our planting palette. We did this by looking at our landscaping for biodiversity, document our master rain gardener list of plants, and Milwaukee municipal sewer district, they have a green infrastructure resource where you can filter for green infrastructure plants. So we kind of combined those lists, looked at where all three had the same plants and narrowed down for what we will choose for design going forward. And our goal really is to limit to 2 to 3 flowers at the most, which I wish we could do more, but really focus on sedges or grasses, which are performing really well from a nutrient uptake standpoint. They're easier to maintain and identify, and then one tree or shrub species. So really trying to keep the habitat benefits, but keep it really simple for maintenance teams to know which plants are supposed to be in the basin and which ones are weeds. So our first attempt at that we did last year, planting at Euclid Beach. So if you get out there, you'll see a lot of sedges. It was featured in the Friends of Euclid Creek newsletter. It was amazing. Lots of staff came out to help. It was, I feel like, over 2,600 plants that got put in. So a big project. And you can see that despite the really rough, hot summer, on that picture in June on left, you can see in October, things are starting to get a little more lush and look a little more happy. And so we'll keep monitoring that. We'll keep an eye on it and see if that template works for us. And next, I'm going to talk about how you can get involved. So shameless plug for our Watershed volunteer program, who I see many are here today. Thanks for joining us. We have since 2012 been running a program out of the Watershed Stewardship Center where we connect stewards who want to learn about watershed theory and want to give back to do restoration, learning, monitoring, and outreach throughout the region. And we specifically do a green infrastructure gardening series with this program. So even if you want to join us and all you want to do is weed and the bioretention, I'm sure we will have a similar series this summer where we do kind of like 8 weeks in a row where we go to 4 or 5 sites and we hit them twice so you can see how they look like early summer versus late summer and watch trends. And then we have a lovely brunch at Merwin's Wharf at the end of the season to celebrate. So this is an example of that out at our Bear parking lot at Brookside Reservation. So consider joining us there. Do you want to do this in your own landscape? Shameless plug for Master Rain Gardener, which is one of my favorite programs. Winter online course is starting next Monday. And they're going to have a winter in-person course in March in Highland Heights. So it's soup to nuts. I think it's 5 classes. You go and you learn everything about how to build your rain garden, how to design it, how to size it. And then at the end, if you build it, you get a little sign for your rain garden and you put it up and you educate your neighbors about all good things, rain gardens and stormwater. So with that, I've thrown a lot at you, but I feel like I see the chat doing some things so we can answer some questions. I think I'm doing really good on time. It went a little fast.
You did great on time. Yeah. Okay, so thank you so much. Please, if any of you have any questions, type them in the chat and we can cover them. Um, as those are kind of rolling in, I'll at least say that we will continue to promote this speaker series through CRWP's e-newsletter on our website and social media. So if you are interested in attending future presentations, be sure to check those out. We have one next week on invasive plant management. But we have at least one question currently. So where do the sands, gravels, and other materials come from?
That's a good question. So most of the time here in Northeast Ohio, I think folks are getting these from Kurtz Brothers. So they have a specific bioretention mix that meets the US EPA or Ohio EPA rules for like how much nutrients you can have and how much silt and clay. I feel like you could make it if you like combine some compost, some sand, and some like ball sand, but I think people just don't go to the effort of doing it. I will say you only need that when you're doing, bioretention engineered. When you're building a rain garden at home, just throw some compost in. You'll be great.
Okay. Do you happen to know like where those are sourced from? Like hopefully not other streams and rivers, maybe mines. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of local mines, and I am definitely not an aggregate expert. But yeah, it's throughout the state. There's several different quarries that folks use for some of this stuff. But I am intrigued because I do think there's going to be we're doing a lot of projects in Northeast Ohio, and I'm wondering when the quarries will not have enough to support all of the things we're doing. Good question.
Does anyone else have any more questions? That's the only one that popped up so far. Please feel free to ask. Um, I guess I will ask a question on you mentioned the soil compacting bioretention cells and everything. Obviously, it makes sense to not pile anything on your bioretention, rain garden, whatnot. Um, are there like ways that you can plant more salt tolerant plants though to kind of, I don't know, have them have better longevity if you do end up,
Yes,
I don't know.
generally most plants don't like salt, but some tolerate it better than others. So I should have mentioned that list that we narrowed it down to. There was also a few more components that we considered, and one of those was salt tolerance. So there's certain it's not really a great native shrub, but bayberry seems to do pretty well in these bioretention, doesn't seem as irritated by salt as others. A lot of the sedges seem to do all right with it. Other yeah, so that list you can filter it by salt tolerance, also by deer tolerance, which is obviously another big issue that we have to deal with here. So you want plants that will stay healthy, will tolerate the conditions you put in them, and won't get eaten or poached. So
Um,
it depends.
yeah, there's a lot to consider. Thank you though. It looks like we have one more that popped up. Is there advice for people living on the lakefront whose driveway drains go straight into the lake? Short of replacing their whole driveways with permeable pavers, like what can they do to encourage green infrastructure and stormwater management?
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm a big advocate for driveway aprons, but it sounds like it would be like your drive. Yeah, I would do your driveway apron. Start small, because that's really that catchment where it's going to catch all of it. And Chagrin River Keeley just did a presentation with scientists from Youngstown State University where they did show that dry or permeable pavement performs pretty well and will do pretty well with climate change. That said, you have to maintain them. And so vacuuming them is a little tricky. I think on a residential application, it would be easier but you got to keep up on it. Um, but yeah, do what you can in your landscape. Um, there's some pretty cool hacks. Like if you wanted to take and put a trench through your driveway to feed your driveway runoff to a rain garden, that would be a cool application. But I'd have to see the site.
Could you speak a little bit more to that trench, so what that would look like?
Oh, if I had my master rain gardener slides. So basically, we have a good example of it at the Watershed Stewardship Center behind. So next time you're at West Creek, come visit us, go to the back porch, and um, you'll see it's basically like, how do you describe it? Like a trench, but it'd be, lined, and then you just have like a metal grate on the top. And then, you would just slope it appropriately so that you'd catch all that runoff from your driveway coming down, hit that trench, water hopefully goes in, and then lead it to your rain garden in your yard.
Awesome. Thank you. Um, so one question is about how commercial lawn care companies blow grass
Hmm.
cuttings onto sidewalks and other like weed cuttings. They go straight into storm drains. What can be done?
Sure, pay attention to what you're doing. Yeah, I mean, it's a common issue. Everyone's so busy and we're moving fast and you got to make the landscape look good. There's an expectation when you come to the parks that things are going to look nice. So, it's just education and constant, um, just consideration and care. So it's doable. I'm convinced. But let me educate. Yeah, sorry, I caught the end of that, but not the beginning. So educate your landscapers. Talk to them. Send them to master rain gardener training. Get them certified.
Have you had issues with maintenance in the park staff, like cutting down vegetation that shouldn't have been cut down or pulling. Yeah, we
I
have that
think
a lot with the master rain gardener.
Yeah, I think Paul can commiserate with me, and especially if you have contractors maintaining, like they seem to know the shrubs. The shrubs are always fine, but anything that's not a shrub is fair game for accidental removal. I'm pretty sure a lot of our lobelia at Wolf Creek got, or at Wolf Picnic at Huntington this year got pulled early season. They thought they were weeds. I'm like, ah, guys, these are going to be so beautiful in July.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's why we're really working on more. And like we have a lot of the older ones where it was like kind of a mix and it was spread out. That just gets way too confusing for maintenance people, especially if they don't have a horticultural background. So if you don't know plants and you're just going out and someone told you to take care of this thing and everything looks like a weed, um, yeah. So we're really focused on doing better with clusters of plants, keeping the planting palette minimum so that we don't have that happen. Because yeah, plants aren't cheap.
No, and that's so unfortunate because that would have been great in July. Um, are you looking at the chat, Elizabeth? It looks like
I
there's one.
am.
Okay.
Let me see. So hi, Derek. You know,
I will at least interject and say that this is being recorded and you can rewatch everything that Elizabeth covered on YouTube. I will send an email to everyone who's attended or even just registered so you can view everything that was covered, even if you were late. Sorry.
calling them out. Um, I don't know if we've really dealt with setbacks from other infrastructure. I do know generally you don't want them within like 10 to 15 feet of your building. That's like rain garden standard. So I'd probably give a little more room for bioretention. Um, you did just make me think we just put in some at Wallace Lake, and I do feel like one's pretty close, but I think it's on a slab, so I think we're gonna get away with it. Um, I'd have to have a sidebar with you, Derek. And then Robert wanted to know what rain retention structures are planned for Metroparks in 2025. So we just had bioretention put in at Edgewater. It won't look, it's going to be grass. So it'll be a very large, just kind of low area that you probably wouldn't even notice. But that is bioretention, and it's going to be doing some work from the parking lot. It's kind of over, not quite near the big willow that everybody loves. And then lakefront admin, so going to the east side for bioretention, just went in over there, off the parking lot there. And one of those will be a little more wild looking because it had to be put into a no-mow landscape. So that one we're going to break our new rules that we set. We'll see what happens. The other ones will stick to our pallets. And then Dunham Park will be the next. And then we have grant applications in for bioretention at Acacia. So stay tuned.
That's super exciting. One popped up. I think this is relating to preventing different plants from being pulled, about having plants that are considered weeds in your infrastructure or the plants you want to keep in different stages of
Yeah,
life.
we also have that. So we've always had from the oh, it's for property owners, the inspection and maintenance manual that Myron Borchard's worked on ages ago. We have an example of like the most common weeds that we see in bioretention. So they always have that for reference. But Diane, one of our seasonals from this year, did a lot of work on picking more specific, the ones that we were seeing more commonly in certain basins. So now we have a reference for like at Wolf Picnic area, we typically see dandelions, X, Y, and Z. So really, yeah, we're trying to build that knowledge base so that if we have, staff transfer, that we can cover those. Good question. Down in the weeds. Question, Paul. I like my blue lobelia. It's done great in my rain gardens. I don't know that we've used a lot of blue lobelia in our bioretention at Metroparks. People just love the cardinal flower because of the hummingbirds. Both of the lobelias, even though they're supposed to come back, they kind of tend to disappear for a while. But if you let them self-seed, they'll spread and they'll come back up. But if you're militant about deadheading, expect them to disappear after a little while. But yeah, I think that they're one of the ones that I kind of push for. I'm a sucker for penstemon. I like penstemon digitalis because it blooms for pretty long and it's in that like July. So Derek wants to know if I have a favorite pre-treatment practice for bioretention, gravel verges, and grass filter strips. They've seen over and over, but more intensive, like a catch basin sump, sheet flow grade berm. Do they seem promising? I will say that we have a lot of trouble with our grass filter strips unless it's like the whole practice. That photo from Wolf Picnic, I'm pretty sure they laid down sod. And I don't know what happened there over time, whether it was salt, mowing it too low, but we just had to redo a whole grass filter strip because it just turned all into weeds. And then I don't love gravel verges. I don't know. I just think they're pain to maintain, too much sediment, and then cleaning it out is kind of terrible. Most of ours, we're really crunched for space. So, we're retrofitting parking lots, which makes it a little tougher. So it's not like we're designing the landscape and intentionally figuring out where we're going to put the bioretention. So we're really kind of forced into that, just sheet flow right over. I think in an ideal world, that seems to work better. Curb cuts, they work if they're designed right. Robert wants to know, are there ways to construct parking lots to retain rather than have it run off? Yes, so that's kind of what I'm speaking to. So in our case, we're retrofitting parking lots as we need to update them. Maybe our grading's not perfect for bioretention, but if you're building new development, you can intentionally design the space so that you have your water draining to bioretention. And if you're disturbing more than an acre, or developing more than an acre in Northeast Ohio, generally, you are required to treat your runoff, and bioretention is one of those considerations. You could also use underground detention if you're shy on space, permeable pavement. But yeah, so that's the whole idea, is like, as we go forward and we're developing, trying to be smarter and design on site and not end up where we are, where we're retrofitting and doing the best we can. Good questions.
All right, I think that brings us to the end of all of these questions. So unless I see another one pop up or anything, I think we can conclude this session. Thank you all so very much for attending. Thank you so much, Elizabeth and Cleveland Metroparks, for all the information and the time. Oh, I guess we do have one more question. Would it be possible to provide the slides?
Yeah, I can, I'll email you a PDF of that, or I'll probably put it in our Google Drive, and then I'll just share that link with you, Maggie, if you want to send it out to folks.
Definitely.
Um,
And one more question, sorry to cut you off. What about the use of pavers with grass in between, like grass strips potentially?
yeah, that's another great best management practice or stormwater control measure. So you can, like, Greenwood Farms, a good example of that, out in Richmond Heights, where they've got the plastic grid, basically, where it looks like grass, but it's reinforced underneath, so you can drive vehicles. You wouldn't use it for heavy parking use, but yeah, that's another great application. You can see a not great use of it down at Cuyahoga Valley National Park at the over in Independence. Design is important, and thinking about where you're going to put stormwater control measures is important. Think about your watershed and choose the best practice.
Yeah. Well, thank you. All right, so
Yep.
everyone, you can expect an email from me probably on Monday that'll contain a link to this recording, those slides, and a survey if you wouldn't mind taking it. But thank you all so very much. Thank you again, Elizabeth.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great weekend. Take care.